Hey guys, what's going on? This is David Chen, and you're on another universe, the Metaverse. On today's edition of Pananomics, New York Weekly's #1 podcast for 2020. And today we have one of my special mentees, partners, and friend, Mike Cortez. And we're going to do something a little bit differently, guys. We're not going to do all the interview stuff today. Mike and I are going to go back and forth. We've gotten a lot of submissions and questions about the Metaverse, a lot of questions about esports. As you know, recently, guys, I did lucky enough for FaZe Clan to do a announcement that they're going to do a public IPO, and they merged with the SPAC that basically made them $1 billion, which makes this a whole nother world. During the last couple of days, Microsoft, Facebook has changed their name to Metaverse. The world has changed around us, and it's happening in such a quick capacity and speed. People are asking, what is the Metaverse? How do I do it? How do I get in it? And so we're going to talk a little bit the best that we can to move forward and make that work, and really talk about how this universe is existing, and a little bit of crypto, a little bit of NFT, and kind of go from there. But Mike, I know you had some questions from the audience, and we're going to talk a little bit discussion about this. Love to make that happen.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a pretty loaded conversation, right? Because first of all, what is the Metaverse? Where do you think it'll take us? I mean, there's so many questions that are going to happen. So I guess what I'm curious about, especially from the fans' point of view, is what's your take on the Metaverse? And if you could give us how you see this making an impact on the world, and specifically esports and gaming as we know it.
What makes this so unique is it's a new frontier, and it hasn't happened before, and most people don't seem to understand it. And quite frankly, it's exploring a new world, right? Let's just be very straightforward on it. What happens in this Metaverse, if I had any indication of what I think it's going to become, it's the movie Ready Player One. Simple as that. That is how it's going to become. You have your own avatar, your own skin, your own reality, your own world. Now, most people think this is kooky, but you do it in fantasy football. You do it when you are playing with your friends, gaming. You're doing it at a position that you have at a specific company, because in that universe, you might be the chairman of the board, but outside of that universe and in the real world, you're just Bob or Dan, who's the dad, right? That's what you are. So these are different universes, and it already exists now. What the Metaverse brings on is a whole new excitement, because it's called interconnectivity. Whether AI comes in, whether crypto and NFTs come in, whether your ability to avatar and play as yourself, we're seeing this more and more. And if you talk about Wall Street's indications, let's take a look at Fortnite. They're looking at a company that has been around forever, Epic, and they did something differently. They beta tested it. They made you buy skins. These skins have no relevancy to how good you play. And at first, when I heard about this, I thought it was the most silliest thing. Then I'm playing, and all of a sudden I realized, man, I want to look like John Wick, or I want to look like Captain America, and I want to play that game. It didn't enhance me, but it gave me a sense of character and identity and perspective. When you talk about this internet world and this universe, it's another character and identity. It's the same identity that you went from junior high to high school and high school to college, right? You were a completely different person. The Metaverse allows that creativity, and whether you get on board or not, it's going to happen. Technology is finally catching up. I was around when Second Life first came out. Within its first month, I was on that platform, and at that point, the technology didn't really get to where it needed to go. But I really think you're going to have retail stores, you're going to have lifestyles, you're going to have cars in a universe that exists, and you will be known as a Metaverse. Is that really as crazy as talking about social media influencers? So that's not crazy at all. It's already happening. So your ability to get onto it is going to make a pretty big difference. That's probably what I would tell anyone out there.
So let's just say for the everyday person that's keeping an eye on the news, especially with Facebook just announcing their name change, what advice would you give to someone that knows nothing about crypto, about the Metaverse? Where would you direct them? Who would you have them just look into, for the sake of, because it's a lot of information, right? Like it's very overwhelming.
Be careful of the prophets. What do I mean by be careful of prophets? Any schmo can read and research and then try to apply that research into the mechanics of NFTs and cryptos and Metaverse. But It doesn't mean that they can do this. Like a jockey and like a horse, when you put the bet, you have to put a bet against the management and their experience and their ability to make this work interconnectively. That's why Facebook and Microsoft are so interesting, because they have millions, if not billions of users combined. They're in the tech space. They have the funding. They have the social mechanisms and influences. Apple will soon get on board. I'm telling you this right now. Apple will soon get on board. Samsung will try to get on board. It'll be the same thing, and they're going to create each other. Now the question is, are they going to interlock with different universes that exist, or for people that are in the comic world, it's called the multiverse? The question is, where do you fit in that ecosystem, right? So you're like, think of it's just an imaginary universe that is real to people who are playing online, right? That's no different than you buying a stock right now and you just bought it on Robinhood. It does not mean that you physically own the stock. You might own the stock, but it's in a digital space, but you're getting it digitally to where you're coming. That's no different than crypto. That's no different than the metaverse. It's a digitalization of that world, right? And we're doing it every day. What ends up happening is people overthink it, so they overcomplicate it, right? What are the rules? What are the regulations? It's whatever the rules and regulations are in that world, right? So what I'm trying to tell people is you have to open your mind and really kind of take a more in-depth look, but there are going to have cryptos out there. There are going to be people who have their own skins. There are going to be people that are interconnected. They're going to be social media influencers from that area. You might even have an Instagram within the metaverse that's just there too as well. It's not ridiculous and improbable. It's absolutely possible.
Yeah, so I guess a different way to look at it is it's going to be a second world, quote unquote, where everything's going to be formatted really however we can imagine, right? And then once technology catches up, VR, AR, any kind of technology that would help us physically get into this world would take us to the next level, right? Who knows when that'll be, but at least for now, for the sake of the next, I don't know, 5 years or so, where do you want to be included in the metaverse? What's your short-term plan and then long-term plan if you have one?
Our plan is to be influential in that market. Our plan is to be part of the market, whether it's the leagues, whether it's the individual players, whether it's the creativity, the connectivity, or any business part of it. Our plans are to get in that market as well. I encourage everyone to kind of look at it. But remember, beware of the profits, right? Because the thing about experts is you can only be an expert, in my opinion, by researching and understanding it. That's one. The second one is you can be an expert by actually doing it, learning from the experience and going from there. This world of learning and research is not that world of reality. If that was the case, every person who has a PhD wouldn't have any problems, right? Because they understand it, they studied it, they know it goes there. Real world things happen. So what you have to do is not look for what you need to do. You need to start looking for what you need to avoid. That's the key word. Trends are the same trends. If someone is coming out to you and saying, I'm going to create this new NFT or this new crypto, and they have no experience, why would you put your money on that when you could put your money in a company that has that experience or has that community? Because that's what ultimately makes the ecosystem work. So look at things that you shouldn't be doing instead of trying to figure out what you should be doing, because it's going to take away a whole bunch of stuff and it's going to stick with the core value of what they're trying to do. And look at trends. If Google and Microsoft and Facebook and the platforms that they have, let's say that there's 3 commonalities, that I guarantee you that those 3 commonalities will be the epicenter of other metaverses that are out there, right? Now the question is, how do you combine it? It's another wild, wild west. And that's who's really going to win, is who can combine it and who can give the authenticity of the community and listen to it while still having some sort of control, kind of like running a country.
Yeah, so that's the exciting part for me, right? Because I'm a total like internet nerd. So like I've always believed in having the internet be as decentralized and free as possible, right? And then of course in the past few years, the government, private industry, they all figured out how to essentially control the internet. So what I'm curious about with this new Wild West that's going to be happening, how many, I know there's going to be a lot of obstacles, especially with the government and especially when money is involved. Do you see the metaverse and these advances as a high risk situation, or do you see them as I don't know. Like, I guess I'm curious what your gut tells you about where things are going with metaverse, crypto, etc.
Let's look at trends in the world. Let's go through them one by one. In the car industry, when Henry Ford started it, the safety requirements and the regulations that existed, but up until the 80s, seatbelts weren't necessary, right? All these trends had to happen and changes had to happen in order for it to get to a certain level and point of what we have to do. And everyone speculated, doubted, and said, I will never buy a horse. I'll buy a carriage because I have a horse. And the people that didn't do the trends lost. Let's get Lamborghini and Ferrari. Lamborghini went in and tells Mr. Ferrari, hey, I own a tractor company, but this could help you better with what you're trying to do. And Ferrari told him to take a hike, and Lamborghini was invented. Let's look at the internet in the 90s, right? It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. And Amazon is worth more than anything else. Let's look at Netflix and the trend of Blockbuster. I sat in a room with a corporate executive Blockbuster, and he told me, he was sitting at the meeting when that happened. They laughed Netflix out of the room. They could have bought Netflix for $1 million. You will always have skeptics when it comes to these trends, because the change, the common people, the most people, change is not easy. It's not fun. It requires a lot more work and time, and it breaks you of your securities. And so people always doubt it. But the problem nowadays is everybody now is so interconnected that they can have people who think similarly. Maybe they weren't able to actually physically go meet this person. Let's say we're in El Paso and there's only certain people that think of this way. But when I start looking at a global perspective, the internet, millions of people think this way. Now I have a community and movement to make it work. That's what the metaverse is going to become. It's a community and movement of making things work based on their own skill set, what they have to do. Your ability is to catch that trend and understand how it works. And like anything else, the powers to be will always control. Like, I hate to tell everyone out there that they don't think they can. If you had all the control in the world, would you let go of that control? Especially if it went against what you're trying to do, your market, your ideas, your strategy, your business. The answer would be hell no. So the difference is there's dreamers and believers, and there's reality. And we saw the crypto market in 2017, it collapsed. It became a big issue on the 18th of December. Regulators came in. They spent 1.5 years regulating it. Mt. Gox, 3 years later, is now paying back to people that owe their money. It's not a precedent before. It's what is going to happen. Is this going to happen over and over in trends? I promise you there'll be regulations in the metaverse, just like there's regulations in the internet. It's inevitable. How do you work with them is what's going to make you a leader. And that's why metaverse with Facebook and Microsoft is so interesting, because now you have the biggest companies knowing how to work with regulators. If Bitcoin came on and Microsoft and Facebook, the day that Bitcoin came out, said they were going to only do that, or they're going to take that payment, it would have escalated crypto. It would have escalated crypto. Now companies are doing it. Why did it take them so many years? Because they had to understand the regulations that existed. They had to understand what the SEC was going to do. That's why people don't jump. People don't jump because they're afraid to, they don't know how to. The people that don't jump are being very conscientious about what is going to happen. And the profits are the ones that are trying to get you to pump and dump and buy. You saw what happened in Squid Game. $3 million, and you don't know who ran the damn thing, and you allowed that to happen, and you didn't do enough research. I read that some guy had $28,000 from China, his life savings. That sucks. But you know what? You should have done your damn research. The profits will tell you what it is, but if they don't have any ability to do so, that's what's going to happen. And so, because Microsoft and Facebook is in it, now it becomes a really interesting game.
Yeah, and that's where, me being an entrepreneur, this is probably, this is a huge opportunity where I don't want to be the person that thought of Amazon, in 1993 and never pulled the trigger. Even if it wasn't Amazon that I built, maybe there was some kind of version that I saw could have happened or at least been pursued. That being said, for entrepreneurs that are watching this, do you see any opportunities? This doesn't have to just do with gaming and your spaces, but I'm curious if you see any opportunities for entrepreneurs to kind of jump into, since this is such a new world, right?
I think I caution entrepreneurs because there are two types of people that happen when they hear this. There's movers and there's people that are watching. Now, the movers think that being first to market guarantees that they're going to win first. Well, if that was the case, MySpace or Friendster would have beaten out Facebook, right? sit back and watch and kind of understand it, and then figure out how you can come in. Maybe you have your own online store. Maybe you're selling skins. Maybe you're selling NFTs. Maybe you're selling cryptos. Maybe you have an ecosystem that exists within that metaverse, which is just another universe. So literally think of it as an imaginative universe that you're a part of. No different than when you're playing 2K and you have your guy, you're the guy that you've made up on the park, Madden, and you're making my player. If you're in the gaming world, you already understand this, right? It's just a different person. So I really think that as people are trying to become more and more together and they start understanding it, there's a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs. But take a step back, identify the risk and regulations before you jump in. Don't let your greed take the best of you. Don't let your ego get the best of you, because once you step on that train, there's no going back. You can't go back to the SEC and say, hey, you know what? I'm sorry, I didn't know that this was a situation. That's your fault, right? Just like a murderer can't say, I didn't know that it was illegal to murder. Well, you still murder someone. You have to understand that rule. But once you get that, I think there'll be plenty of opportunities. I think there'll be stores. I think there's going to be plazas. I think there's going to be clothing. I think there's going to be cars. I think there's going to be everything that you want out there, but they're going to be in such an epic mode, because not everyone could buy a Bugatti, but I guarantee you there'll be a tank like a Bugatti. I guarantee you there'll be an airplane, the most luxurious airplanes out there that's part of the metaverse. It's just a new way to interact. So that's the way I see it going. But just be cautious of what you're trying to do before you jump in. What do you see, Mike?
Man, I mean, my mind goes crazy with where this could go, but I personally am trying to look at first, because I know this is still a very young technology, right? Considering Bitcoin's only been around for what, 10 years, maybe 12 years now. So that being said, it's barely coming to a point where people that aren't purely programmers and tech savvy individuals are able to kind of jump on and at least see the vision. What I'm curious about is what the infrastructure for this world is going to look like. So I'm looking at things like who's going to run the new system for APIs, like what I already know the internet is built on, which are these platforms. That's where I see opportunity. On the technical side. On the fun side, with things that I'm interested, I mean, I want to see a virtual comedy club. I want to see a virtual, you know what I mean? Because let's say living in El Paso, I can't go to see certain shows. So now I have the ability to at least get closer than I would have been watching it from just a camera, like a live stream on Lollapalooza. Maybe I could actually be at the festival. So the entertainment is very interesting. I think that's the first thing. And then from there, I think we're just going to see the first step will be a lot of copies of apps that are already successful. So there's probably going to be a Tinder for metaverse characters, right? There's probably going to be, I mean, let's be honest, there's going to be a lot of those things that I think are going to pop up first, because those are all just human tendencies like that we lean towards. So social networks, I'm curious to see where that goes. Maybe that becomes decentralized, and then now we don't have a Mark Zuckerberg running the world anymore. Maybe it's more universal. But I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. That's why I'm asking these questions as well.
No, I love it. I mean, look, a lot of it's theory, but I will promise you that there will be these worlds that exist. And so how does your company evolve? You have to get the community now and brand it into that community. Let's talk about this community. Esports, crypto, NFT, gaming, current trends are the same demographic. It's the truth, right? It's the same demographic. We've seen the power of this demographic. We saw what they did at Reddit to GameStop. We saw what happened at Robinhood. We saw the impossible happen because it's the ability to connect to masses. That's what we saw. So now, if we've seen this, and this whole demographic is the same community, and as we're getting older, they all start taking over, then you have to be instilled in the brand now to build that brand. So when they get to that level, they are going to be with you. And you have to be true about it. This is a very sophisticated community. I have done so many things, as you know, Mike. Let's talk about the course of the last 2 weeks. Facebook announces the $1 billion IPO. Microsoft jumps in. Bitcoin's at an all-time high. Tesla's talking about their own links, right? Apple is really heavily trying to do what they're trying to do. Facebook changed its name to Metaverse. Are we really not talking about the same thing at this point? Everyone's jumping in because they realize that is a trend and a lifestyle and it's here to stay. So what really matters at that point in time is our ability to adapt to it and make that work. And so that's what excites me too. We're going to see all this crazy stuff out there. And who would have thought that influencers would have the influence that they have now? I mean, there's influence that have more influence than celebrities, right? I remember in the 90s, there were people that were sitting there and they were part of this real reality TV. And one of the most famous people in the world is the Kardashians, and they were not in TV or moving. They became that reality. The unthinkable has become the thinkable. So that's why these trends matter. Getting into these communities, understanding them earlier is what's going to make that adapt, which will give you the sense of community, which means that you can come in and be part of that brand. And that's where I see people winning, because they'll see if you're not authentic and they'll go Google you. And, recently I joined another company. I'm not going to even name the name of the company. You can find it, but it has something to do with esports and tokens. And you've seen it, Mike. The price points move because they do their research on you. And if you're legit, they'll work with you. That's what matters now. And that's what makes it really exciting and interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm getting very it's exciting, right? Because I think it's all exponential. Like you said, we have Microsoft jumping in. I've seen there's a lot of news of the Unreal brand is jumping in. They're making their own metaverse. I mean, that's going to be a whole other conversation, right? What happens when big brands like Call of Duty set their foot into the marketplace? I mean, I would imagine everything's just going to explode as far as the gaming world, but entertainment in general, right? As far as the metaverse is concerned, what I want to know outside of esports and crypto, I want to know how because let's say generationally speaking, you're in, are you millennial or Gen X?
I'm a ninja, bro. I'm a panda. I'm everything. Come on, man.
So with generations, because I like having this conversation with multiple generations, because every generation has a different idea of what that is.
Man, I didn't know we were gonna. I mean, come on, Mike. I mean, you're killing me here, bro. But anyways,
but like with Gen Z, I part of me thinks the youth will always set the path for the future, right? Whether the older generation cares about it or not, nobody thought the internet thing would become something. They just thought it was a fad, it was a trend,
you know
it
why
was
that
dangerous.
is?
Why is that?
Because people die.
Yeah.
So it's inevitable this is going to happen.
Yeah, that's the way I see it.
Right.
Yeah, and it's hard to convince anyone that's from certain generations, because they know their world very clearly and they think they know the world as a whole, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you translate the metaverse to these older generations, or is
You
it
don't.
birth?
You don't. What's going to happen is it's an education thing and it's a trend. So as they're catching on, they'll catch on. And typically people that catch on are people who understand these trends. And if they're older people, right, per se, they already know, they understand why the electric car is important. They understand why Facebook gaming or metaverse is important. They understand why esports and crypto is important. They understand it already. And they might be an older age. Doesn't mean everyone that generation is, because they weren't used to it, right? It's almost like a ridiculous thing to them. But because it wasn't real when they were around. So they can't fathom how the heck you did it and how come during my time for it didn't happen. It just is what it is. But what makes that interesting is the ones like your Mark Cubans and your Damon Johns and your Kevin O'Learys, I promise you they'll pick it up because they understand the influence and tech side of it, right? And the other people who usually aren't like that, maybe you're a typical broker, nothing towards brokers, but it's not something you're interested in, it won't affect them either which way. But it is a new and exciting gold rush that is going to happen in this metaverse. And you're either on it or you're not on it. But you have to fully understand it before you should get on it.
Yeah, well said. I think we're kind of up to the time. But last thing I do want to ask, because you do have a very solid financial background, I don't want you to necessarily give financial advice, but how can somebody think more strategically how do you, what kind of advice can you give to anyone that's jumping into this crypto world with caution, but also just some kind of guidance without it being financial advice, of course?
I want you to see on the screen. I don't want you to go on me. I want to see your face. I'm telling you this. I obviously am not a financial advisor, but I'm not going to give you the financial advice. I'm going to tell you what I think it's going to be. Right? Greed will get the best of you. When the crypto experience in 17 up to December of 18, when Bitcoin was hitting at 20,000, everyone understood HODL, but they didn't know what it meant. Everyone understood Bitcoin, but they had no idea what it was. That's greed. That's what's happening to NFTs right now. Everybody understands NFTs. Everybody's an NFT expert. Everyone. But why are the bigger companies not jumping into NFTs immediately? Because they have a bunch of people, dummies, that are way smarter than me and way smarter than anyone else, that are researching from a legal, a PR, a structural side, everything that you can imagine. If you don't think that Microsoft and you don't think that Samsung and you don't think that Tesla aren't looking at these technologies way ahead of time, or IoT space or whatever else, then you're pretty much dead wrong. It's insane that they actually do that because they're looking at it. So when people start jumping in, let me give you an example. This company, right, one of the companies I own, and now an IPO, when I was getting calls from gamers, it wasn't like, yo, what the fuck? It was more like, hey, congratulations, this is good for our whole universe.
Yeah, 100%.
It made it normal. When Elon said that Tesla was going to take Bitcoin, it shot up to 60 because it made it normal. When Burger King right now is giving out cryptos, they're making it normal. It's just your ability to accept the new world or your inability to. That's what it is. So when I tell you what you just said is, how do you accept it and understand it? How do you operate? And if you can understand that, then you can understand that these things make sense. The big boys jumped in because their whole entire team figured it out, and then they did it. You know what, dude, Mike, this is no secret. I'll tell you this right now. The top crypto and NFT companies in the world are working with us. I've done an ICO, I've done IPOs, I've done all the big problems that have existed. And let me tell you why it's taken me so long. Because I have a social responsibility to my listeners, to my people, to people that are my funds, to literally do the right thing. So if I don't do my whole entire due diligence and I don't partner with the biggest names, then there's something wrong with me, because most of those times those are cash grabs, i.e. Squid Games, i.e. all these new NFTs and tokens. If you can't sell it, then it becomes an issue. So you might be able to price it and pump it up that it's worth 4 Ethereum. But if you get someone to buy it at 5 Ethereum, there's a problem. Now try to do 10,000 of them. Because a one-off anyone can do. But that only means one. If you want a true community, that's why your Doge pounds are doing 10,000. That's why your nobility tokens are doing 10,000, because those are the numbers that make sense. That is why the NBA started doing NFTs. And look at the way they did it. Gary did it in a certain which way, because they understood that the potential risk, but they still wanted their name out in the market. That's the difference between what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. See what everyone else is doing, because they have way more smarter people than us that actually do the research and understand it, the good and the bad, and then they go to market. You don't think obviously we know they do that because they're not going to risk their company just because it's cool. But where most people do is 99% is they'll just, oh, well, I heard, so I'm going to put money, and they let greed get the best of them. Well, anyone listening to my podcast knows that's the wrong way to do it. And anyone that ever knows me or any problems I've ever had, I've ever been attacked, is because greed is their biggest problem. It's not because I don't want to do the right thing. So I'm saying that right now to everyone else. That's extremely important, because you're not smarter than me, man, half these people. And I'll tell you, I'm waiting and I'm pulling the trigger soon, and we'll make some big announcements. But we have to know everything. It's our responsibility as people to do the right thing. And if more people think that way, which I believe they will in the metaverse, it will become what we want it to become, something amazing.
Awesome.
Appreciate it, man. Mike, as usual, thanks for joining us. Mike, give us your social media handles a little bit.
Yeah, if you want to follow me, Instagram is my main account for now. So just go ahead and follow me at mike.empire. I'm pretty active there. So news, everything I like to talk about, all of it.
Right. And you guys know where to follow me at. But remember, guys, whatever you're doing, research, understand, ask as many questions. If somebody is just telling you the good things and not the bad things, they're not watching out for you. That's why on this show, we tell you the good and the bad, because we're watching out for you. So keep that in mind as you continue growing the metaverse, because a salesman will tell you everything's great. This is hocus pocus water. But a doctor will tell you the pros and cons of this water. And that, my friends, is the difference. For David Chen, Mike Cortez, the whole Patanomics family, we'll see you guys soon. Stay blessed. And as we're reaching to our 100th episode coming up, I'm excited. We'll do some cool things, but we'd also love to meet some of our fans. So submit. Love to give you guys some swag, some gear out there. Meet everyone that is interested, but give us a contact, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Good night.